Okay.
Well, it's 7 o'clock, so I will call the meeting to order. And good evening, counselors, staff, presenters, the press, and online viewers. We begin tonight's meeting with the acknowledgement that the land on which we are gathered is in the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, specifically Mississauga. We would also like to acknowledge the North Channel Métis Council. We say miigwech to thank Indigenous people for taking care of this land from time immemorial. We are called to treat this sacred land, its plants, animals, stories, and its peoples with honor and respect. And as we know, June is National Indigenous History Month, and we, with our First Nation communities, recognize these events in the spirit of reconciliation. Prior to beginning this evening's agenda, I would ask that each counselor who is present via this video conferencing to answer the roll call when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Paula Summers.
Present.
Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar.
Present.
Councillor Jim Dunbar.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Wells.
Present.
Councillor H.P. Roy sends his regrets. Councillor Jennifer Posterero.
Present.
Thank you. The month of June is also Pride Month, which is considered to be an important opportunity to reflect on the history of the LGBTQ+ community finding acceptance in our world. While it is more widely accepted today than ever before, history is able to tell the long stories of why this was not the case for such a long time. Pride Month is a time for each individual to be proud of who they are and the unique offerings they have to bring to the world. There is a lot of information on the web to read and learn about the LGBTQ+ community, recognizing how everyone can find a variety of ways to enjoy and celebrate Pride Month. Well, what started as a concept a few years ago certainly has mushroomed into incredible welcome bags, thanks to the efforts of our Rotary team. I personally took the liberty of going through one of the bags prior to bringing it over to my new neighbor, and I have to say I was really impressed. It's so refreshing to see the many business and recreational organizations coming together to welcome newcomers to the town of Blind River. And thanks to Rotary, the welcome bags will be given to newcomers via our real estate agents. If you know of someone who is new to the community, when you send them out a neighborhood welcome, ensure they have a bag as well as introducing them to the Town of Blind River website and email address info@blindriver.ca to get the weekly updates. The call for candidates for our municipal election is underway. If you are considering running for town council, please go to the town website and follow the steps to register. Last but not least, we continue to pray for everyone in Ukraine and hope that the war ends quickly. Now, without further ado, turning to tonight's agenda, I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Summers, seconded by Councillor Posterero. Be it resolved that council approve the agenda as presented. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And is there any declarations of conflict of interest on the items from tonight's agenda? Seeing none. I have a motion from Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Jim Dunbar. Be it resolved that council adopt the minutes of the public meeting held May 16th, 2022, and the minutes of the regular council meeting of May 16th, 2022, as presented. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And was there any business council wishes to bring up at this time as a result of the last meeting minutes? And seeing none, we can move on to our public presentation. And we have two presenters with us tonight on the wastewater treatment plant needs. We have Gustavo Arbizu, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, Gustavo, and Chris Kirby. And Gustavo and Chris are here. Gustavo from SEMA and Chris Kirby from Tulloch Engineering. And the floor is yours. Thank you.
Excellent. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. Do you see my screen?
I do.
So thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, members of council and worship. So we're just presenting briefly the findings of a capacity and needs assessment that was done for the wastewater treatment plant. So just a quick agenda. We looked at what the existing challenges are at the treatment plant and what our findings were when we did the capacity assessment. And we'll review the recommendations and the proposed next steps. So just a overview of the plant. I'm going to try and move my cursor here to see if can you see my cursor if I move it
can.
around?
Yes.
Okay. So there's here are the main components of the plant. There's a pumping station that lifts the flow to these grid channels. And then it goes into this donut-shaped treatment plant, which consists of 4 compartments, so 2 aeration tanks, a central donut ring, if you will, it's a clarifier tank. And then there's this last component which stores the sludge that's produced by the plant. So the treated effluent from the plant goes back into this chamber where there's a UV disinfection system before it discharges into the lake. So that's the main layout, the main components of the plant. You see here in this historical record drawing that there's a provision for a future plant that was going to be identical, but this is what the gray area is what's existing at this time. So just as far as a matter of context, there's an environmental compliance approval, which is essentially the legal permit that mandates the operation of this plant. And it sets the legal requirements for its performance and reporting to the Ministry of the Environment. So it defines the capacity and also what the required treatment levels need to be at any given point. So there's also a particular interest is this clause within the permit, which has that there's special reporting has to be done and the town has to demonstrate proactive actions in case there's a situation when the design objectives of the facility are not consistently achieved. So as far as the review that we completed, you see here on this chart, the gray lines represent the flows to the plant, and the red line is the actual capacity of the plant. So you see at a glance that there were some instances where the capacity of the plant was exceeded per the permit. You have here now a comparison between what you would see the blue line represents flows on a typical dry weather day. And the orange represents what happens when there's a significant precipitation event, like a wet weather or snow melt or things like that. And again, you see what the line is, right? So what was obvious through an analysis is that when there's a precipitation event, the capacity of the facility is exceeded, but during normal water flow conditions, dry water flow conditions, there's plenty of capacity. So we identified here there's a list of some of the process upsets and bypassing events that have occurred since 2018. So there's quite a few. And again, these are the result of the plant not being able to handle those wet weather flow events. So through our analysis, we went through each component of the plant and we analyzed what was the required capacity against the existing capacity. So you see these different bars here against the colored bars here. And so for example, the pumping station, we identified there's a capacity gap there. Grit removal, there has sufficient capacity. The aeration tank capacity is sufficient. The secondary clarifiers are undersized, or the secondary clarifier is undersized. And then lastly, disinfection is also undersized. So that's, again, a result of the plant not being able to handle those significant wet weather flow events. So to summarize, the challenges we found were there's significant wet weather flow, and there's a huge difference between what the plant would see in terms of dry weather flow versus what it would see during rain events or snow melt conditions. And those flows exceed the capacity of the plant. There's another challenge that was found is the little sludge storage tank that was showed, that little compartment in the plant, has a very small, very little capacity to store during the winter months when the sludge cannot be hauled away from the plant. So that leads to increased or reduced performance, and also makes it worse when there's a wet weather flow event. It causes upsets and bypasses. The other issue too is, you notice there's only one of each thing, so there's limited redundancy. So if there was to be a failure in the system, the plant is vulnerable and could lead to non-compliance. The other thing too is electrical equipment is past its expected service life. So the issue with that is, if there was a failure, the parts are not available to facilitate the repair. So it would have to do a emergency replacement, which would be very costly and very impactful on the performance of the plant. Lastly, the plant is operated mainly in a manual mode, so there's no ability to adjust things as flows changes or as different conditions occur in the plant. So the best practice with new facilities is to have an automatic system that is monitored automatically and provides trending and so on and so forth. So as far as recommended upgrades, the first thing was to upgrade the pumping station to address those capacity gaps. And the next thing would be a new equalization tank. So an equalization tank, the function of that is to reduce the impact on the downstream processes of these peaks. So it essentially shaves the peaks and the flow, so that the flow that goes downstream is more even and controlled. The next thing would be a new sludge storage tank to give you the capacity to store the sludge between December and March, which is the period when hauling cannot be done. There's also a requirement for blower upgrades. Blowers are a piece of equipment that is used for the treatment process. And there's some complaints regarding the noise levels those produce. However, these blowers they have some life left in them, so our recommendation is not to replace them until they reach the end of their expected service life. And lastly, SCADA, which is the system used to monitor and control the process automatically, and electrical equipment, it is recommended that it's upgraded. So these are the key findings and recommendations. I'm just going to show you some photos or some images showing conceptually what this would look like. So we're proposing to build a new tank here that would act as an equalization tank. And purposely, we made it look like the existing plant, because you could build this in a way that allows you to, in the future, if it's ever required, convert this into a second plant, essentially, so that you double essentially the capacity of the facility with very little incremental cost. But initially, the intent is that this tank would only act as a way of reducing the effect of wet weather flows downstream. So flows exceeding the capacity of this plant would spill into this tank, and then they would gradually be sent back to this plant for treatment. You also see here a sludge storage tank, which is required to give you that capacity during the winter months. And that's generally what the site would look like. So you would see a tank that's very similar to what you have existing, plus an above grade steel tank which I'll show you a picture of. So here, this is just some photos of what a tank might look like, that equalization tank. So it's very similar, I guess, to what you have existing, with various compartments, and they can be isolated and so on and so forth. And this can be retrofitted to act as a treatment plant in the future if it's ever required. Otherwise, it can always operate it normally as an equalization tank. And then here schematically, it shows you that the process would be that any excess, any flow exceeding the capacity of the plant would be sent to this equalization tank, and then it would gradually be pumped back to the process for treatment when the wet weather flow condition is completed. And then this is a picture of what a sludge storage tank might look like. This is a glass fused to steel tank. It's built, it has a concrete foundation, and it's built in like little rings. So the height can be adjusted as required. And it's a fairly low tech solution. Again, the idea is just to store all the sludge that's produced in the plant during those winter months. Here I have understanding that this would be a significant investment for the town. We came up with a staging approach that sort of lists in the order of preference, in the order of priority, which projects should be implemented first. So the first priority to make sure that you can meet your effluent criteria and what your permit requires would be the equalization tank and that sludge storage tank. Right, so this would significantly reduce the number of bypasses and the severity of process bypasses and upsets. And this is, our estimate was that this would cost 4.2 million. Again, this is a very high level cost estimate, and there's opportunities to find cost reduction opportunities, but at a planning level, our estimate is 4.2 million. And we recommend that this be done within the next 5 years to make sure that you don't have continued bypasses and issues with compliance. The next priority, the next project would be the upgrades to the pumping station. The UV system, there's some minor upgrades that need to be done there to make sure that the facility has hydraulic capacity to handle all the flows. And then there's the electrical and SCADA upgrades that I mentioned. And that would have a estimated cost of 1.1 million. And if this is done earlier, this is not as critical, so it could be pushed to the next 5-year period, between 5 to 10 years. And lastly, there's the blower replacement, which would reduce noise levels and also improve energy efficiency in the plant, thus reducing the operating cost. But since the blowers that are existing are still have like 10 to 15 years left in life, we don't recommend that this be done until the end of their service life, and this would cost approximately $260,000. So that's the end of my presentation. Wonder if there's any questions.
Gustavo, if you could reduce your screen so that I can see all of council, that would be a big help. Thank you. Thank you. Does council have any questions for Gustavo? Councillor Pastorero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Gustavo, for your presentation. I'm just wondering, the $4.2 million quote that is there, does that include all the necessary infrastructure for that build for it to be a future treatment plant if it's so desired to be that way, or is it just for the equalization tank specifications that you were discussing?
Yeah, it does not include the cost of so just to, I guess, the difference between the equalization tank and what your existing plant has to make it work as a full plant is the equipment within the tank. So there's some equipment to inject air into the system, as well as some pumping and sludge scraping and collection systems. So those would not be necessary initially. and would only be recommended if you choose to retrofit the plant for the future. So this cost does not include that.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, it would just be the physical space, as Gustavo said, the circular concrete structure, and then we'd have to come in later to add the aeration system, the clarifier rake, and the pumps and whatnot. So it's the physical shape of the existing facility, but just that concrete. It give you the volume to store the offline, store that excess peak flow offline, and again, going to that secondary system footprint would give you the option to expand, as Gustavo said, like double the capacity down the road. If that's, you know, something the council doesn't think an expansion is required years from now, it would take some long range planning. You could go to a different type of offline storage as well, just almost like a sludge storage tank, but a flow storage tank as well. So there's alternatives there that will be looked at further down in the planning process and under the EA studies.
And so there would be no reason to, like, looking down the road, that is the potential to use it as another future site. So is there any cost saving measures to do any of those enhancements while we're building the structure, or it's best to wait until we're using it for those purposes?
I would say if you're going to treat it as a second treatment facility in the future, you build the concrete now, but I wouldn't put any of those components in because they'd just be sitting there wearing out over time.
Councillor Jim Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Gustavo, thank you for your presentation. And I'm going through it here, and I was looking at the, you gave a chronological order. Someone has put a chronological order here on how about, you know, going about completing this in project stages. And I had stage 1, stage 2, 3, 4, and 5. And they were broken down with stage 1 as 1,800,000. The second was 2,363,000. And I don't have to go into the details what curtailed, you know. I understand what you put out there in front of us. So obviously this can be done in stages, as you suggested. Okay, yeah. Now you mentioned something about the electrical equipment, and I might need maybe some insight here. I thought we spent like close to hundreds of thousands of dollars on the electrical equipment over at that plant already. And maybe Chris or maybe Miss Scott might have some insight. I might be, you said it was electrical equipment. I know we did electrical upgrades there at one point to fix maybe the mess we had over there. So this money we spent to fix on the electrical had nothing to do with the equipment, Chris?
Yeah, so those improvements were completed prior to Telex's involvement. I'm going from my knowledge at the site there that there was a lot of issues addressed on aging electrical that was there that was running down. The money that was spent was good investment. It's kept the plant running the way it is now, but to expand it, to add in, you know, the additional pumps for the sludge storage and the bypassing for the equalization tank, you're going to need additional improvements to the existing plant or to the existing electrical house. But yeah, there was money spent, as you say. I'm not sure what that exact number was. It wasn't throwaway money. It was required at the time to keep your plant operating, and so far it has been doing what it's needed to do. We've had a few bypasses, as you're aware of, but it wasn't throwaway at the time. No.
Okay, no, thank you for that, Chris. Thanks.
Are there any other questions for Gustavo? Seeing none, Gustavo, thank you very much. This is a very enlightening presentation, and certainly we're going to have to be getting our pencil sharpened again to move forward and ensure that our asset is keeping with the times, for sure. Chris, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. We've been working with Gustavo to pull this report together. The bulk of the legwork on his side, obviously, with the nice report and presentation. What facilitated or precipitated this study was the fact that you're having bypasses at the plant, right? And as the data shows, a lot of these bypasses occur during high stormwater, high rainfall flow. So it just lends to it provides proof to what everybody knows. The system is getting a lot of infiltration to it. So getting that equalization tank in there to take that peak flow so it can be set aside and handled later is key. That would be number one, as outlined in the report, and two being the sludge storage. PUC's been working admirably actually to hold that storage on site during the winter months with some creative processes, but that in turn is taken away. It kind of lowers the capacity of the plant during those winter months and leading into the spring thaw. So it's getting a double whammy in the springtime. So that's it's just nice to have a report that supports what we've known, but here's the proof. It's laid out. Now we can work forward with it.
Councillor Pastorero?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering, with the report, it seems so imperative that we get on this and we fix it before there's real integrity degradation with a 5-year plan. And looking at the drawing and knowing that future plan has been on there since 1978, I'm just wondering, are there any reserves to put towards the renewal of this, or this is just sticker shock value, boom, we have $5 million that we need to spend in the next 5 years?
It's a financial question, I know, and Ms. Dent, our treasurer, has just put her screen on. So Sue, over to you.
The short answer is no, there are no reserves. And you will recall that we've had this discussion many times that money was not set aside over the past years. Rates were not increased enough to be able to put money away over the past years. So we do not have reserves that we can use for this project at all. I shouldn't say we don't have any, but we have like $180,000 for the wastewater treatment plant. So it might as well be nothing at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Jim Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Chris, the chronological staging, was that maybe that came from you? You know, you suggested it. Maybe we could break that down into, that 1.8, getting this piece of equipment. And was that you who set that up, or was that Gustavo who set?
Gustavo laid out the staging and sourced the quotes from suppliers, budget pricing quotes. And when you're saying that, are you looking at table 7.5 in the report?
Yeah, I thought it might be. It was a project. Okay. Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm looking at the same table as you are. But ideally, those, Gustavo laid out the report, but those would be the same stages that I would look at doing things. Equalization to get that exit. When you get hit with that peak flow, it just turfs the system. So let's get that out of the way and handle. That would be, like I say, stage one. So I mean, if you had 1.8 million, we could do it next year, but yeah, that's all obviously not in the budget and going to have, likely have to look for external funding sources as they may come available. But I know there's usually something that comes out every year to deal with infrastructure. So especially on the treatment side, the sewer and water, and even, some climate change things that we've seen come up lately might be applicable to a site like this.
Okay, perfect, because that's where I was leading to my follow-up as funding opportunities or grants, maybe from government agencies pertaining to this here.
Yeah, and now you have the report you can attach right to a funding application. So it's, you know, it does bear some weight when they're reviewing applications is, you know, they're asking if you're just pulling numbers out of the sky or if you did any background studies. Well, here's that supporting document to go with the application.
Well, as we always know, we need to sharpen our pencils, and budgeting is always an interesting exercise when we find out new facts about our infrastructure. So thank you for that. We do appreciate it. Gustavo, thank you. This is a very good report, and it gives us council a lot of time to reflect and discuss our next steps. And I'm sure this will also come up with our infrastructure meetings as well. So I thank you, and I thank you too, Chris, for being here tonight. Really appreciate this presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to the introduction and consideration of administrative reports. Administration has provided us a report on our ongoing projects, our capital projects updates. Does council have any questions for Ms. Scott on this report? Deputy Mayor Paula Summers.
Just looking at the report, I was just wondering how the Travel Information Center is coming along.
You, Madam Mayor, the Travel Information Center is coming along quite well. We do have some supply delays, so that's the holdup at this time. It has not been the fault of the contractors. When the supplies arrive, they are on site and working diligently to get it completed. So we're now aiming for the end of June, hoping that our door will be in and the heating units that we've ordered will also be in, but there was some delays to those stocks.
And are there any other questions on the project update report? Seeing none, moving on to 9.2, I have a motion before me, moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Fosteraro. Be it resolved that council grant relief from section 4.1.11 of the Comprehensive Land Use Zoning Bylaw 16-49 for the town of Blind River for the property located at 275 El Dorado Road for permission to increase the number of sea storage containers for a non-residential or rural zone to 10, where 3 is permitted, to allow for the construction of a Quonset type storage structure. Discussion? All in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. 9.3, we have another variance on High Road. I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Summers, seconded by Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar. Be it resolved that council authorize the expansion of the legal non-conforming single detached dwelling with a required 98.4 feet setback to the high water mark to allow for the construction of a 345 square foot addition while maintaining a 41 foot setback from the high water mark be approved at 1787 High Road. Discussion? All in favor of this motion? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the service delivery review. We have an update on the service delivery review and how it is progressing. Are there any questions on the review status? And seeing none, moving on to agenda number 11, presentation of the committee reports. Community Services met on May 25th, 2022, and we have a motion coming forward from that meeting. The motion is moved by Councillor Jim Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Fosteraro. Be it resolved that council authorize the efficiency within project 9000-6090 be reallocated to 9000-6231 in order to proceed with demolition of a derelict stage located at the town park as recommended by the Community Services Committee. Questions, comments? Councillor Jim Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to bring it to the attention that this stage, it's underutilized now. It's quite derelict. It's falling apart in some spots. So thus the reason why the committee has brought it forward to council to look at this. And I think it's seen better days myself, and if anything, it could be a hazard over there right now in the schoolyard.
Thank you. And seeing no other hands going up at this time, all in favor of this motion? And that's carried. Thank you. And the Corporate Services Committee met on May 30th, 2022. And under this committee, we have two recommendations. The first one is moved by Deputy Mayor Summer, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved, the Corporate Services Committee recommends that Council approve the delegation of authority policy as presented. Questions? Councillor Jim Dunbar and then Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar.
Thank you again, Mayor Hagman. I see this, you know, and I understand that this is probably a required policy. I'm led to believe that we'll have to address. But there is quite a bit of legal, you know, information in there, and I just might call it jargon to absorb. And I'm just wondering if I might ask Ms. Scott if she could, you know, maybe give some answers here as to, you know, what this policy is all about, and, you know, who can we delegate this powers of authority to.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Dunbar. So each year, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing conducts an audit on all of our policies that we have in place. The province directs which policies municipalities must have in place. As part of our audit in March, it was found that this was one of the policies that we were lacking in having. And we were requested to put forward this policy along with a couple others that have already come to council. This policy sets the guidelines, if you will, for council to be able to delegate its authority should you be required. So for instance, during the pandemic, when everything was up in the air and we had no idea what was going to happen, council did delegate a number of authorities to myself. There should have been in place this policy to show how those authorities would be delegated. So essentially, this is a guideline for council to enable them to give their authorities under the Municipal Act to either a person or to a committee. You could essentially delegate your authority under the Municipal Act and following this policy by bylaw to either a committee or to one person, that being possibly myself or another member of the staff, to look after all minor variances. So that would not hit the council table. You could give that authority over to a committee to do that for council if you wish. There's nothing in this policy that says you must delegate the authority. This policy is only going to be in place should the need arise or for the desire of council to delegate some of the authorities that you have over to an independent body or person.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, can this committee be a committee of council, Ms. Scott, or a mixed group with, I think I saw 50%. Of council members. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. And that's the rationale for the policy, is that it shows what that committee must be made up of. So when bringing forward a bylaw, we would refer to this policy and as to the reason and rationale for that. But it is a requirement. It's a housekeeping policy that is requested and required by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
So this policy is coming forward now to pass? yet to determine how we're going to delegate this, correct?
That's correct. And there's at this time, there's no need to delegate any authorities, but you need to have this policy should the need arise for you to delegate authorities.
Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar.
Ms. Scott just answered my question. Thank you, Mayor Hickman. I just wanted clarification as well. We are only passing the policy. We're not actually delegating any authority at this time.
Through you, Mayor Hagman, yes, that is correct. You would be passing and delegating authorities by bylaw. So a separate independent bylaw would come to council.
All good questions, and all the questions that were asked at our corporate services committee meeting as well. Thank you. And so moving forward on this policy, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And the next one that came forward at the corporate services committee meeting had to do with the cyber insurance. And I have a motion on the table moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Deputy Mayor Summers. Be it resolved that Corporate Services Committee recommends to Council that the quote from CFC Underwriting for cyber insurance in the amount of $10,270 plus applicable taxes be accepted. Questions, comments? Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. I asked this question during the community services meeting, corporate services meeting, sorry, and I'll ask it again tonight. The quote from CFC on the first page still refers to the company as being the Town of Blind River and the North Shore Power Group. And it was my understanding that we're just acquiring cybersecurity for the Town of Blind River. Will that be clarified before we accept this proposal?
Through Madam Mayor, yes, it will. They did the quote based on last year. So when they did up the paperwork, because this is the same company we had for our previous year's cyber insurance, they neglected to change the name. The North Shore Power Group will be removed. They will not be covered under this policy.
Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Summers?
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. I believe that the other question we had was, there was a couple of items that were showing on the next quote, dealing with possible issues that needed maybe to be looked at. And I believe we were just wondering if that was something that needed to be dealt with in-house.
Through Madam Mayor, yes. So those items that were identified are not from our proposed insurer, but we will certainly look at those and see if there's anything that needs to be addressed immediately, or if we need to plan to address some of those in the future.
Thank you.
I'm seeing no other hands going up at this time. Would you raise your hands all in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. I have nothing further under unfinished business, so we're moving on to correspondence requiring action. I have a motion with regards to correspondence we received on May 20th from the Township of Tarbet, Renosum. The motion is from Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Jim Dunbar. Whereas Northern Ontario residents have less access to healthcare and a higher rate of health inequity than any other place in Ontario. And whereas a mental health crisis is looming with record high addiction, PTSD, and trauma being 3 times higher in Northern Ontario than anywhere else in Canada. And whereas physician remuneration in Northern Ontario is inadequate to compete with other wealthier Southern Ontario communities who can provide enhanced recruitment and incentives. Whereas it has been proven that access to medical services brings jobs and other healthcare professionals to communities, in addition to economic growth, improved health of the population and attraction of industry. And whereas there is a desperate need for expanded residency programs at the Northern Ontario School of Medicine University, now primary care and emergency physicians, as well as pediatricians, anesthesiologist, psychiatrist, OBGYN, and other specialties without waiting for the Royal College approval, which takes roughly 18 months. Now therefore be it resolved that the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Health respond to the request from Nossum University and Northern Ontario communities to transform human health resource planning immediately to relieve the healthcare crisis occurring now with no doctors, a severe nursing shortage, limited powers of nurse practitioners, and lack of access to other health disciplines, and that the province accelerate the approval process so that the expanded medical student intake can commence in the fall of 2022, and that this resolution be circulated to the Township of Tarbet, ADMA, the Premier of Ontario, the Ontario Minister of Health, Northern Ontario MPPs, and Dr. Sarita Verma, President, Northern Ontario School of Medicine University. Questions, comments? Seeing none. All in favor? Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Summers, did you have a comment?
Sorry, I was slow on my hand going up. Just a comment, because this was one of the issues that was brought up at Phenom that Biddy and Councillor Dunbar and I went to, and we actually had Dr. Sarita she did do a presentation, because the school is ready to accept these students. It's just the red tape that is stopping it from happening this fall compared to next fall. And that would make such a difference in the amount of learners that we would have out there if we could get this passed sooner than later. So I think it's really something that we want to be working at for sure.
Yes, I totally agree. With the number of physician shortages right across Northern Ontario, we are in a crisis situation, so they can't move fast enough. Thank you for that. Any other comments? I know everyone's in agreement on what's going on. Could I have a show of hands on this motion? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And the next item is related to the North Shore Group, the Omni debt repayment. I have a motion from Councillor Pastorero, seconded by Councillor Deputy Mayor Summers. Whereas North Shore Power Group has received the annual payment from Omni in the amount of $930,288.90. Therefore, be it resolved that Council direct North Shore Power Group to move the $930,281.90 to the balloon payment account, and that confirmation of the funds transfer be provided to the CAO clerk. Comments? Councillor Pastorero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering if the first statement needs to be amended, where it says, whereas that's the quarterly payment that was due on March 31st. It's not the annual payment.
Right.
So the 930,000 is only a quarterly payment, and hopefully we'll get 3 more of those. So I'm just hoping that would be amended to reflect that.
And I have done that in my working copy. Thank you for that. And I know that our trusty e-scribe person is also doing the same. So here we go. Councillor Jim Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm overwhelmed to see this. I like to pride myself that I'm interested in everything that comes across this table, some more than others. And this is one of them. And this is just a fantastic detail here. And kudos to the board over at North Shore Power Group. And I was going to bring up the fact that there was a typo from annual to quarterly, by the way. Thank you, Councillor Pastorero.
I can also tell you that the board at North Shore Power Group is equally excited about hearing this news. And now it is time to vote on this motion. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And we have the next on our agenda is on May 30th, we received a request from the Mississauga First Nation, read the 41st annual traditional powwow. It's nice to see that these are coming back again. And I have a motion on the table from Deputy Mayor Summers, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved that council authorize a donation in the amount of $250 to the Mississauga First Nation 41st Annual Traditional Powwow to be held July 16th and 17th, 2022. Discussion? All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And I have a motion on the table from Councillor Pastorero, seconded by Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar. Be it resolved that council accept the tender from Beamish Construction in the amount of $418,650 plus HST for the waterfront shoreline stabilization project as recommended by Tulloch Engineering. Questions, comments? Councillor Pastorero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know if the question is appropriate, but we have two amazing local companies that are bidding for this. I'm just wondering why there's such a disparity in the quote. It's over like $200,000 difference. Like, were they tabulating for the exact same job?
Ms. Scott?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So I can tell you that the tenders were received and were reviewed by our engineers. The engineers did reach out to both contractors to discuss some of the discrepancies in the pricing, and both confirmed their numbers and the project that they did bid on. So we did look at that definitely very closely because we certainly didn't want to have something that was underbid either. So we did reach out through our engineers to confirm.
Thank you. Any other questions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And correspondence under information, we had 14.1, the North Shore Power Group Board of Directors meeting on May 18th. The minutes are showing there. And I see no questions on that. May 16th, Cameco provided us with their 2021 annual report for the Blind River Refinery. And on May 31st, the OPP gave us an update on online reporting on minor crimes. And last but not least, for information, East Algoma Community Futures Development Corporation has extended an invitation for their annual general meeting on June 23rd. This invitation is extended to council, and if you are interested in attending this meeting, please respond to the Community Futures Development Corporation directly. This is also an evening of dedication at Sellers Park. So I know I unfortunately won't be able to make both events. So under introduction and consideration of bylaws, we have a motion from Councillor Jim Dunbar, seconded by Councillor Pastorero. Be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and CAO clerk to sign bylaw 2236, being a bylaw of the corporation of the town of Blind River, to approve the deeming request to allow for the consolation of the three properties located at 38 Togo Street, 40 Togo Street, and 42 Togo Street was passed in open council this 6th day of June 2022. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And we have a wonderful council report from Councillor Summers and Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar, who went to the Phenom conference. Looks like the two of you had a very informative time while you were there. Does council have any questions for our two representatives? Deputy Mayor Summers.
I just have a comment. Thank you, Betty Ann, for writing that up. She did a very great job. Also, I did bring the Phenom papers as to what went on exactly. I will leave it in the counselor's office if anyone wants to go through and just see exactly for sure all the different things that went on. So it was very informative, very well done, and thank you very much for an opportunity for us to go.
And thank you for attending. Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar.
I just want to add my thanks for allowing us to attend it. It really was. And I think it, for me, some of it actually raised more questions than answers for me. And I would hope at some time when we are all able to sit at the same table again, that we can have some discussion about some of the things that were brought forward to us. And I think the one that stands out for me is the opioid crisis and the homelessness. And I think I'd like to have that discussion with council at some time. You know, whose responsibility is it, and you know, what are the numbers, and what can we do, or what should we be doing? And those are just the questions that I had that came forward to me at that time. So yes, it was so interesting.
Oh,
Thank you.
great. That's great. Well, I can tell you that sitting on the board of Algoma Public Health, there is a lot of discussion about the opioid crisis, and they certainly have a lot of preventative measures that they are putting in place. So just somewhat comforting, but we still have a runaway train. Yes. Councillor Jim Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I myself had the opportunity to attend a Phenom meeting, and I'm just curious. I mean, this all obviously was prior to the pandemic. My question would be to either councillors. Were you able to see if there was any opportunity for delegations to any of the ministers or ministries during your time down there on Phenom?
Not that I'm aware of.
Usually the delegations are at Roma and Amos, so I'm sure we'll see more. Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar?
Although Paula and I did have an interesting dinner companions one day. We did sit with the municipal affairs or infrastructure, municipal affairs, and yes, we had quite the discussion. So yes, we were able to champion our own community and the things that we need.
You did a little networking, did you?
We did a little networking. We did do that.
Excellent. You're great representatives for sure. Well, we have no other addendums, and we have no closed session tonight. So there won't be a report on the closed session as I go through the agenda. So moving on to agenda item 21, confirming bylaw, and this is moved by Deputy Mayor Summers, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and CAO clerk to sign bylaw 22-37, being a bylaw of the corporation of the town of Blind River, to adopt the minutes of the meeting of June 6th, was passed in open council the 6th day of June 2022. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. And last but not least, this is a red letter day, seeing that we're going to get this in just in time. Moved by Councillor Betty Ann Dunbar, seconded by Deputy Mayor Summers. Be it resolved that council adjourn at 7:59 p.m. All in favor of this motion? We're under an hour, folks. And that is carried. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you soon. Take care.